Hey everybody, who's your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 18 of season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars called The Jedi Who Knew Too Much. This is in title a reference to a classic sort of mystery thriller film called The Man Who Knew Too Much. Look it up on Wikipedia if you're interested, but we're going to dive right into this episode. Overall, there are some good elements to this episode, but there are also some really serious misgivings that I have about the plot. But let's start in on a more positive note, and by that I mean the funeral of a bunch of people who died in a terrorist bombing. Yes, we get to see the Jedi funeral, and that is what these are formally called. The Yeah, okay, hey, amazingly enough, Jedi funerals for Jedi are called Jedi funerals. Hey, who'd have thought, huh? Anyway, the really cool thing here is, of course, visually the way this is handled. I presume that those big beams of light getting shot up into the sky are somehow symbolic in some way of cremation, which seems to be the preferred method of dealing with the bodies of fallen Jedi. We saw, Qui-Gon Jinn got cremated. Yuvin Parval, or forgive me if I pronounced that wrong. The little pig-looking dude who got mauled to death on the prison planet. They chucked his body into a pit full of lava, and of course, Anakin. Jeez, Luke burned Anakin's body after he had redeemed himself on the forest moon of Endor at the end of Return of the Jedi. Now, speaking of the Jedi and Return of the Jedi and all that other fun stuff, we get to hear Yoda say something that evokes one of his most famous lines, and he uses the words "luminous beings we are." And this is, of course, a reference to in the original trilogy where he's talking to Luke and he says, and I believe this is word for word, "luminous beings we are, not this crude matter." And of all the things that Yoda says, behind "do or do not, there is no try," that's my number two favorite because it is simply just a very beautiful, very profound statement. And honestly, it's also kind of true. If you know a little bit about science, you realize that all the atoms that make up our body continually break down and are part of other things throughout thousands and thousands of years of history. Like, say, an atom of the iron that helps make up my hand. Well, thousands of years ago, this could have been a part of the atom that made up like Napoleon's big toe, for all we know. I mean, if you really stop and think about this, and read some of the science about just how like planets are formed and things like this, we are really essentially literally made from stuff that used to be floating around out in space millions and billions of years ago. It's to me insanely fascinating stuff, and also very profound, very interesting thing to think on, to think about where the molecules and atoms that compose our bodies were thousands of years ago and where they'll be thousands of years from now. But I'm getting completely off track, so let's continue on. I do have to say this was noticeably more fancy than what happened to the funeral that poor Qui-Gon Jinn got. Not really sure why they had to immediately have that funeral there on Naboo. It couldn't have possibly taken that long to get the body back to the temple for Coruscant. I mean, he might not have been the Jedi Council's favorite, but the dude was a Jedi Master who died helping save Naboo. You'd think that they could have afforded, the guy the courtesy of going all out, huh? But, that was then, this is now. Continuity marches on, eh? Would like to point out that just like the funeral of Qui-Gon Jinn, we have your friend and mine, Palpatine, in attendance. And just to make it even more horrible, yeah, Grand Moff Tarkin is also around. So he can go around and be a dick to the Jedi in their own home. Although it certainly was hard not to grin just a little bit when he says to the Ahsoka that Palpatine never really does anything without a plan in mind. And man, Grand Moff Tarkin is not kidding. And I also like how this very subtly sort of continues the idea that Anakin and Tarkin really seem to get along. And we've seen quite a bit lately of Anakin really really coming down pretty solidly on the side of being the good Jedi. But here, with his relationship with Tarkin, we are reminded of that darker aspect to his character. Like in Episode 2, where he was pretty much openly advocating fascism. Then someone should make them. Yeah, Padme. If your potential boyfriend is an open advocate of fascism, maybe you should really rethink those romantic picnics with him on the Boo Fields, huh? At least to his credit, George Lucas admits that he sucks at writing love scenes. This incidentally is a ginseng drink. I do guess I should take this moment to apologize to you guys for this review coming out a little bit late. I was sick most of the weekend. Today's the first day that I've really been back at 100% since Friday. So anyway, let's move on to what's going on with the big thing here with Ahsoka ending up framed for Letta's murder. First of all, let's see. Letta was murdered by somebody who can use the Force and lightsabers and is bad. Let's see. Who's been running around this season that we know fits all that criteria? Oh, gee, I can't think of anyone it could possibly be except for maybe, oh yeah, freaking Darth Maul. Okay, yes, there is, of course, the entire possibility that, yes, there really is a traitor in the Jedi Order and all this other fun stuff. But seriously, just throw a brown robe on Darth Maul and he can go off and trick this housewife into murdering her husband and passing himself off as a Jedi. I mean, come on. I mean, really? I mean, not that Jedi haven't gone over to the Separatist side or to Dooku's side. I mean, we've seen that here in the show. We've seen it in the comics. It is established that this does happen, but, go for the simplest explanation, folks. Now, normally I don't really like to speculate or make predictions as to what's going to happen on shows, because I'm one of those people that it really grates on me if I do that and then I get it wrong. But some things are just so obvious it's hard not to. Now, of course, this whole setup does come with certain problems. First of all, it's even openly acknowledged that for some mysterious reason, the audio of the video in which Letta is killed is mysteriously cut out. There's also the fact that Ahsoka, just by the look on her, is obviously freaked out about what is happening, and is not. I mean, just look at the look on her face. She is clearly not doing this, and she is clearly panicking. In fact, I mean, she was talking during that, right? So I would presume that lip readers exist in the Star Wars universe. So, yeah. And then with all these clones getting murdered and all this other stuff, the only way this works is if those cameras are also somehow conveniently sabotaged during a time when Ahsoka couldn't have possibly done it. I mean, the logistics of how this is supposed to be a believable setup are so unbelievably ridiculous. I do not have words for them. I mean, my God, this is like you got a drunk like the worst amateur mystery writers in the world, got them together in a room, got them drunk, and then asked them to write a frame up in the Star Wars universe. Speaking of which, why exactly are there clones guarding this prison? I mean, aren't there regular guys you can hire to do this? Why the super highly trained commando guys? Why are they guarding this prison? Shouldn't they be off killing droids somewhere? I mean, if this is like some kind of maximum security prison for super dangerous people like force users or separatist, high-level separatist spies. Okay, I could see that, but it's never explained why these guys are there. I mean, granted, it's not super important to the plot, but if they're using clones for this, that seems to heavily indicate that it's somehow important. And even Tarkin's own words in this episode, that clones are part of the military, makes this in some way, shape, or form a military prison. So, I mean, granted, the clones are basically the military, but the Clone Wars have been going on for a while. Surely you've been able to train some ordinary people to take over, to do some military stuff. But you know what? I'm just beating my head against the wall here because realistically, if you try and think about the logistics of how the Clone Wars work too much, it just becomes really absurd. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so anyway, now we get to see a lot of nice action sequences. We get to see Ahsoka being really cool, really badass, and really showing her stuff that she is on her way to becoming an absolute top-notch Jedi. Clearly, she has learned a lot from Anakin. You just can't say Ahsoka is just an absolutely awesome Jedi. So that's basically all I have to say about that part. And one thing that I did get a kick out of was that when the clones are shooting at her with the stun settings, they fire the little blue donut things at her that took down Princess Leia in Episode 4. So some very, very nice continuity there. And this all wraps up with Ahsoka sort of standing at the edge of the hole in the wall with Anakin, having this big crazy conversation. If you missed it, this is a nod to the old Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones movie, The Fugitive. I believe it came out in 1994. Actually, that's actually a very good movie, by the way. If you haven't had the chance, go see it. It's really quite good. But again, here we run into a major plot hole. Now, Ahsoka, at this point, believes that there is a traitor within the Jedi Order. Okay? That makes sense given everything that's happened, what she's seen, how she's clearly being set up, somebody in the Jedi doing this to her. Okay, this makes sense. So why not take the 2 seconds to say, there is a traitor in the Jedi Order, they're setting me up to Anakin. He is the one Jedi in the entire Order that Ahsoka can almost absolutely surely trust. I mean, not even almost. She knows he wasn't there during the bombing because he was with her. And, him being her master, she probably has a pretty good idea of his movements. So, and the fact that, he's the big champion, the Jedi's #1 hero in the Clone Wars, and that the Separatist leader cut off his freaking hand. And, the Trade Federation, the guys who were one of the major backers of the Separatists, they also had a big hand in killing Qui-Gon Jinn, who, Anakin is still pretty upset about that all these years later. So the idea that Anakin would help the Separatists is just completely and utterly laughable. And even if Ahsoka tells him this, then what's going on suddenly seems much more reasonable. And she could even say to him before she jumps out of there, don't tell anybody else. I mean, now granted, she doesn't know for 100 if she does that he won't go and tell Obi-Wan or Yoda or the Jedi Council. But here's the thing, that's not a bad thing. Okay, the Jedi have had traitors within their midst before. They have the Jedi Sentinels and the Jedi Shadows, guys who were specifically trained at dealing with this kind of stuff. So the idea that Ahsoka is going to run off and figure this all out by herself, okay, I'm just going to let that go because that's what has to happen in order to tell this story. And I'm not saying that it's going to be a bad story. It looks like it's going to be quite an interesting story. It's just not going to be a terribly logical story. And for a show that has such good writing as this show does, the gaps and leaps of logic, the failures of common sense that they are asking us to accept here, I gotta say, as a member of the audience, I'm feeling a little insulted here. Now, granted, you can chalk some of this up to, as Anakin says, she's still very young. And, Ahsoka's in a really rough situation. She's probably not thinking too clearly. But, Ahsoka's smart. She really should be smarter than this. And, frankly, so should the show. But we'll see how this all plays out. And that's really all I got for you this time, folks. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.